All right, so today was still cold. I'm at the hostel, Hemlock Hollow, in this little cabin. Um, and so Monarch had some family stuff, so he was sticking around to stay on close to his phone. He said, "Why don't we go back to that hot spring? I didn't get to do it." So I booked the hot spring tub again today. I put a picture. It was really beautiful. There was a fire pit, there was a shower, lounge chairs. We saw these big birds in the creek. I don't think they were turkey vultures and they were flying. It was really nice. Um, I'm glad I didn't do that hike to here because Monarch, he's tall, like 6 foot something, three, whatever. He hiked it and said a lot of the drifts were like at his knee or a little above his knee, which I feel like would be my chest. Probably not, but like definitely closer to like mid thigh for me to walk 9 miles through those drifts. Would have been a lot. Then I thought, well, today was only going to be 40, maybe 42. Um, and I know that there's about 7 people that left out this morning. And Hope, who had come southbound, said there were a couple of guys at the 3 mile away shelter who were zeroing there, and then they were going to hike out this morning too. So what I thought was, if those 10 folks or more are going and they're getting rid of all the snowdrifts and it's melting and it might be a little muddy tomorrow, but the temp tomorrow should be in the 50s. It starts out at like 32 and then it goes up, and then tomorrow night should only be about 32. So I finally won't be sweating in my sleeping bag. So I thought the best decision for me, plus there was also in the forecast perhaps some snow and rain today, like this morning, this afternoon, and again, wet and cold. I'm not wet and warm, I'll do. Cold and dry, I'm gonna do. But wet and cold, I'm just out on, and that's just what I'm doing. That's my hike I'm hiking now, so that I survive it. Um, and try to enjoy it as much as possible, which isn't very much right now. So tomorrow morning, I'm getting up. I'm going to get a shuttle to the trailhead. And I'm going to do my biggest day, which is a little over 10 miles to I guess, 2 shelters from here. But so, Florida man who is working at this hostel said like the first 0.8 miles is like sheer cliff, hard climb. And it's 5 miles up this hill. But he was saying it wasn't like a sustained 5 miles, that it was like 1,000 feet up, and then a little bit of a walk, and then 1,000 feet up and a little bit of a walk or whatever. So that sounds a lot more doable, especially for doing 5 miles. He said once I get to the top, it's like a lot of ridge walk. Then it's fairly, quote, easy. Everybody's definition of easy is very different than mine. But I want to start, I've been doing like 8 and 9 mile days pretty much consistently. So it's time to start consistently doing 10 mile days, and then maybe in a week or so I can push to like 12 or 14 mile days. I think there's one maybe in 2 days, like a shelter is about 13 miles away, so I'm probably gonna at least attempt to go the 13 miles. I don't want to consistently do too many miles, but like I can consistently, hopefully now, do 10 miles a day and like push to a 14 if I need to, or 15 if it's like a close enough shelter. I mean, that'd be far, but you know what I'm saying? Maybe you don't. But anyway, like if I need to just push a couple more miles to get to a shelter, I'll push a couple more miles. But I don't want to push like, I want to bump it up 1 or 2 miles. I don't want to bump it up 5 or 6 miles consistently. So I'm going to try to do 10s for the next week or so. And then after that, I'll try to do like consistent 12s and then 14s and 16s, and just kind of, by the time hopefully I get to Damascus, I think things are supposed to like level out a little bit and not be such drastic ups and downs. And then I could do bigger miles consistently, which means I'm chunking down more of this trail so that I can be done this dumb thing and figure out what it is faster. So it was a good day. Pooch and Echo ended up showing up. They rode into town with us. And we keep laughing about it being a vortex. And they were joking, like, if every trail town's like this, we're never going to finish trail. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's just Hot Springs is the vortex. And so after, like, they went to the tavern and didn't go to the tub. And then after Monarch and I were done soaking in the tub, we went to the tavern. And then Amy, the massage lady friend of mine now, she walked in with her daughter and her husband, and I hadn't met her husband yet, but she told him all about us. So like, got to give them big hugs and see them again. And then Aaron from Tobacco Road came into the tavern for a drink. So I got to see him one more time and say goodbye. And I was hoping that Tim and Amanda at the tavern would be there, but I'm guessing it was their day off. It's Wednesday. So like the manager guy was there, but they weren't there. But it was just one last nice Hot Springs goodbye. But now I'm like done with Hot Springs. So I'm just heading north towards Irwin. There's one hostel left between here and there. I'm going to try to stay at. And then I'm going to text the diner people and see if the offer still stands to come have a hot meal, maybe a hot bed at their place. And they're like maybe 10 miles from Irwin, so I could stay with them. They could drop me back on trail and I could get down to Irwin the next day. But I always say, like, I make these videos like, here's my plan. And then the next thing is like, just kidding. Here's the opposite plan of what I just said. So I don't really have a plan other than I'm hiking north to Katahdin. I'm going to stay at hostels. I'm going to eat food. I'm going to dread a lot of it. And maybe someday it will be fun. So that's kind of the plan. But I was going to talk about a little bit about the second promise because I keep alluding to it, and I kind of said, well, I was like 12 or 13. I made this promise to myself. This one's not going to be a crying video. But in the crying video, the first promise one, I explained why promises are so important to me. And if I promise myself, which was only 2 promises ever to myself, I promise I'm going to do this, means that I need to do it, right? Because I'm keeping my promises to myself. And so I kept that first promise. And I had made that when I was young, like pretty young, like very, very young. So I used to go to this little Christian summer camp called Camp Sandy Hill. I think it was like in Northeast Maryland, somewhere near the Chesapeake, or all in the Chesapeake Bay. And like my favorite parts of that were like sailing. We had these like glorified paddle boards with like a sail that would whip around. And if there were like new kids on there, they get smashed in the head with the boom, and it was kind of funny. Sad, but like everybody's like, hey, watch out. And they're like, what? I'm like, boom to the head. And I loved the sailing part. I feel like a lot of times if you run things by a kid or a teenager, logos, sayings, whatever, like they're going to catch it and tell you what's wrong with it or what's inappropriate about it or laugh. And you're like, okay, whatever. So it was Camp Sandy Hill, and they had this thing called Sandy Hill tripping. Now there was very good Christian people, and I've never done drugs, but I've been around a lot of them and a lot of people who do them. And so that has very different connotations than like, hey, it's our little group of people, we're going on a trip. Like a literal physical, we're going to go ride a bike, or we're going to paddle a canoe, or we're going to go hike a trail. That's what they meant at the camp. But then we would get these shirts, and it had like a little cartoon, I don't know, of people or whatever, backpack, and it would say in big letters like Sandy Hill tripping. And I would wear the shirt, and no one said anything. And I'm like, what is happening? Again, the 80s, early night, like weird times. So anyway, it was called Sandy Hill tripping, and I had done like, we biked all of Delaware, like with tents on the back of our bikes, and we camped and tented and just rode our bikes, went to the beach, whatever. So this one time I went on a trip, Sandy Hill tripping, and it was the Appalachian Trail. And so I had borrowed a backpack from a neighbor, external frame, like orange backpack. And I got some hiking boots, and I got a really heavy sleeping bag, and I don't know what all I had. I'm sure it was very heavy because this was before all this ultralight stuff started happening, and also super budget. So like beg, borrow, steal, didn't steal, but beg and borrow from neighbors and friends. And so I got to Camp Sandy Hill, and I remember we all packed up in the van, the tripping van, And we drove to somewhere in Pennsylvania at some trailhead, and they just dropped us off. And it was like, I don't know, 8 or 10 of us, probably like 12 and 13-year-olds, and these two like 20-year-old college kids. And we just started walking, and we walked and we sang and we drank water, and they just had like a paper trail book. And of course, no cell phones existed. I mean, I guess technically a car phone existed, but like no cell phone, no contact with the outside world. And I remember them like using Nalgene bottles of creek water, and we just used like a couple drops of bleach. And then they put like instant pudding and powdered milk, and then they'd stick it in the creek to get cold. So after our like terrible meals, I remember the like dinners not being good. We'd have like this chocolate pudding. We'd all just share, like drink out of this Nalgene bottle and then wash it in the creek. And I'm thinking that's not leave no trace, but like whatever, live and learn. And so we hiked, and I remember we ran out of water, and we went to the water source, and there was no water like day 2 or 3 of this week. And we all gathered around and we prayed that God would make it rain. And then it started raining, and we're like freaking out. But there were like some broad leaves, so I like made it like a funnel, and then we were just holding our bottles, and the leaf was letting the water go through. So we were collecting water because we were all just like thinking we were gonna die of thirst. Um, and like it was fun, and it was adventure, and there were all these people, like these girls around, and these, of course, we always thought they were so cool. Like these 20-year-old counselors were like so old and so cool. And then I remember coming down a hill, and one of them like was having knee problems, and I was like, girl, I get it now, because these hills are hard on knees. But it was to the point where she could barely walk, and the other counselor was like holding her up by her arm, and like we were taking turns on the other arm, but like we're kids with backpacks and whatever, so probably like every 100 feet, and we're trying to get down this trail. So we end up at like a trailhead parking lot, and there wasn't anybody there. And then this guy in like a Chester Molester white van shows up. Maybe it was a truck, I don't know, but I remember it was just white. And he's like, do you need help? And they're like, yeah, we're just we need to get to like a phone. And he's like, well, I can only take one of you. And I immediately think like, man, this guy's a serial killer. He's going to kill us all. What's happening? Like, I've always been fascinated with serial killers, but maybe it's because I thought we were going to get killed by one. Um, so the girl who was hurt went with him. And like she jumps in the truck or the van, and they're about to drive off. And I look at everyone. I'm like, we need to get the license plate in case something happens. Of course, we have no pen and paper. So we're all just like reciting it, remembering. And like every 10 minutes, I'm like, license plate check. And we'd all say it. And it was hours, and it felt like all day, but it was probably a couple hours. And we're waiting there. No other cars have come. We're sitting in the sun, wondering like, did she die? Are we getting rescued? Will anyone show up? Are we just stuck here for the rest of our lives? I mean, all the things that drama 13-year-old girls were like really building this story of being these castaway hikers that are never gonna get rescued. And like I said, it was a few hours, couple hours, like a long time later. Maybe it was a truck. And then I remember this big van from another Christian camp shows up, and apparently like she had gotten to a payphone and called I was scratching my hand, sorry, called, I guess, Camp Sandy Hill, that found another camp down there, and they came and got her, and then they came and rescued us, and we went to this Christian camp, I think kind of just to regroup. I don't remember, maybe we spent the night there, maybe we didn't. And then I remember we shuttled from there down to Harper's Ferry, maybe like the next day. And we all went whitewater rafting. So I'm laughing thinking about this because I was saying it to somebody today. Like, even in my original hike, like something happened and we skipped miles and then just got somewhere and did something fun. And I was like, well, that's kind of what I'm doing on this hike. So maybe that's why I feel good about, like, not good, like, yeah, let's keep doing it. But like, I feel content and 100% like those miles tried to kill me with cold and wet. So I'm just skipping them and moving on and not worried about it. And I don't feel like, oh, I need to go back and do those in nicer weather. I'm like, it's done, moving north. And maybe because that's what my hike was originally, was kind of very similar. But I just remember being on there and finding out that this trail was like 2,000 miles long. And in my head, that seemed like, whoa, that's like the longest thing ever. And I bet nobody's ever done that before. And I'm going to be the first one to hike this thing. And then found out later, because I subscribed with my allowance, like Backpacker magazine, because I was like going to do this thing. And so I got that for a few years, and I learned about equipment, and I learned about all the different trails, and I learned about all this outdoor stuff, and I was really into it back then. And I got it, and I realized like, oh, people do through hike this thing. Like, it's a thing people do. I'm not gonna be the first one. I don't even think I was disappointed. I'm like, this is awesome. This is something I can do. And I remember sitting down, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but I was like, I promise one day I'm doing this. And I remember like the gravity of that at the time. And so that's really why I'm out here doing this, is because promises mean more than just, oh, it's just a promise. It's like, it's so important to keep it. So I'm glad that so far my tendons and ligaments are holding up. And I guess tomorrow I'll be at like mile 300, 302, I think is the cabin, but like mile 300. So that seems significant, but also insignificant. And then I'm going to keep hiking. I think my hammock just got delivered yesterday. So I'm trying to find a place and time where my son can drive that out to me. I've ordered a couple other little things. So when I swap all my stuff, he can take my winter gear home, and I'll have my hammock and my quilt. Should have a lot more room in my backpack. And I'm trying to find a spot where there's like a hostel where we can both stay and I can slack pack. Or if it's like not the weekend, I can just hang out there for a couple days and slack pack and wait for him to come, and then just take a 0 to that weekend and hang out with him, figure out my hammock, throw it up a few times in a few different places just to make sure I've got the hang of it. That's punny. The literal hang of the hammock. And then again, keep moving north. So that's the plan. We'll see how it changes like by tomorrow, but should be tomorrow, not super early, but probably by like 9 at the latest, get on trail and just hike all day long. And I've been stopping at like 2 and 3 because I feel like, oh, I've done my 8 or 9 miles. And I realized like I could keep hiking. Of course, my feet were hurting, but like I could keep hiking. So tomorrow it's a longer day. So I'm going to try to every 2 hours make a point to stop, take off my shoes, and like massage my feet, eat something, drink something, and then keep going, because that seems to make a big difference. And I know it does, and then I forget about it. I don't forget. I just refuse to do it for some stupid reason. So I'm going to try to do better about that tomorrow. But yeah, so that's like the second promise. And I've spent way too much time in Hot Springs and not enough time in Hot Springs. But I'm ready. Like, I'm not in Hot Springs now. I think I'm in Greenville, Tennessee. We're right on this swapping back and forth between Tennessee, North Carolina. So like one night it's a North Carolina shelter, the next night it's a Tennessee shelter, back and forth because I'm like right on the border. But I think I'm in Tennessee right now, but I'm not in Hot Springs, North Carolina. So that's like the important thing. I got out of the vortex and I'm ready to, I said to somebody, the word excited is not the right word, but like I'm ready to start hiking again, get on the trail so that I can get off the trail and be done. So that's kind of where I am. I'm going to try to get a really good night's sleep tonight, hopefully, and then just to have a good breakfast, and then just shuttle out to that trailhead and start climbing up a very steep first 1 mile. Well, he said 0.8 miles. So it's not even a mile, but close enough. 0.8 miles of the trail to get up there and keep going and see what happens. So we'll see.